advice. I don't think we've done it before on this platform, but I give it to you now, and I thank you very, very much for what you've done for St. and for coming here again tonight. Well, Mr. Farquharson's talk tonight, which will be very instructive, his talks are always very good and enlightening, is vegetarianism in relation to man's inner nature. And I have very much pleasure in calling upon Mr. Farquharson to address you tonight. Mr. Farquharson.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, now after all that I hope I won't let you down. Now, as you notice, the title is very broad. It enables me to take a wide sweep. So we'll start. On the 23rd of last month, the 23rd of October, the sun, as seen from the earth, entered the sign Scorpio, the 8th sign of the zodiac, and it remains there until the 22nd of this month. Now Scorpio, from time immemorial, and remember the zodiac goes back into the very night of time, Scorpio from time immemorial has been linked up with, first, desire, death, and rebirth. It is the sign assigned to the angels of death. In Hinduism, it is assigned to Yama, the god of death. And one of the ancient Hindu scriptures, the Katha Upanishad, that Katha Upanishad is really young Brahman Nachiketas, very, very fine young man. Remember, the Katha Upanishad is about over 5,000 years old, so things were different then to what they are now. Now his father, a Brahmin, was to make a great sacrifice, which meant giving everything away. And but the father wanted a lot of honor, people to think what a wonderful man he was, but he was an old hypocrite. He gave away, he had quite a lot of old sheep and old cows and things like that, which weren't much use, cows of their milk and, sheep that were old too, and he gave them all away. But all the best he had kept. Now he had one son, Nachiketas, and Nachiketas knew it. Now Nachiketas was an outstanding character, and he said to his father, "Father," he said, "you are making this great sacrifice. You're a Brahmin. You are looked up to. People respect and look up to you. You've got to make a great sacrifice. I'm your own. Who are you giving me to? Who do you give me to?" And he said, "No." He said, "You're my son, my only son. I don't give you to anyone." "Father," he said, "you are making a sacrifice. You call it sacrifice. Who do you give me to?" He asked it 3 times. The 3rd time the father lost his temper. He said, "I give you to death." "All right," said Nachiketas, "now I will see that I'm put to death." So Nachiketas, this young Brahmin, found himself in the house of Yama, the god of death, Scorpio. And Yama was away for 3 days, had been away, there'd been a war somewhere, and he was very busy. So when he came back, his housekeeper said, "Here, there's been a young Brahmin here, waiting for you for 3 days. So he said he was very sorry. He went and apologized to the boy, and he said, "Well, I'll give you 3, you've been here 3 days, I'll give you 3 boons. You can ask me 3 things." "All right," said Nachiketas, "the first I'll ask you is this. Send me back to my body, and do not let my father be cross with me." "Done," said Yama, "that's all right." The second one, he wanted to know how to awaken the inner fires, what we Hindus call Kundalini, how to guide it. He told him that. Now he said the third. Now he said, "What's the third?" Yama, he said, "I want to know this. In Hinduism, it is taught that the soul, of course, is immortal. It is a spark of Brahma, the one universal self, God, spark of God. It comes down to earth life, time after time, in order that its capacities, its potentialities may be drawn out, just as you put the acorn into the ground, so that it shall become the mighty oak. Now, he said, we die, we go to the heaven world, and then we come back, and then we come to your realm again. Now I want to know how to attain eternal life, eternal consciousness, so that I never have to come back into this realm of death again. Oh, Yama says, don't ask me that. Listen, I'll give you anything you want, anything else. Now he said, listen, how would you like to be the greatest emperor on earth, king on earth, and to have 100 of the most beautiful wives, and also the most wonderful wives, and also to have 100 sons, and each of them in turn will be a king? How would you like that? And Nachiketa said, well, you see, the trouble is this, I come back, I have all these things, then I've got to die, and I've got to come to your realm again. And this goes on and on and on. I want to know how to get liberation, to attain liberation, so that I no longer have to come through, so that I'm free of this wheel of constant living on the earth plane, dying, going to the heaven world, coming back again, over and over again. Well, Yama said, I expect I'll have to tell you. Now the secret is this. Of all the millions of people that come, that are here on the earth, that come to me, that die, and come back again, the whole trouble is, all of them are seeking pleasure. They're all seeking pleasure. They're all desiring pleasure. They're desiring something. They think, oh, if only things were different. If only I was a king. If only I was a queen. If only I had a wonderful husband. If I'd had this, I'd be happy. Or if I had $1 million. Or if I was this, that, the other. Then I'd be happy. He says that's what they all want, desire, and of course it's that desire that brings them back to them. Here, time after time, they've got to come back to get it, to get the fruit of what they want, because that's what they want, and of course that's their desire, and they come back again to get on earth to get it, and so they come back to time, they become a king, and that isn't what they want, then they try something else. They're all searching for happiness. Now he said, of the hundreds of millions of people who like that, scarcely one seeks to perfect themselves. The secret is to perfect your bodies, perfect the vehicles, become absolutely perfect that physical body of yours, perfect your emotions and have complete control of them, have complete control and a perfect mind, break down the sense of separateness, but absolutely perfect them. Don't worry about don't desire anything but perfection to perfect yourself. Then you'll reach liberation. That is the secret. And you know, the same thing was put, you read it in the Light of Asia, because in India they call it Trishna. Scorpio is also Trishna amongst the Buddhists. Let me read from the Light of Asia. Trishna, that thirst which makes the living drink deeper and deeper of the false salt waves whereon they float, pleasures, ambitions, wealth, praise, fame, or domination, conquest, love, rich meats and robes, and fair abodes and pride of ancient lines, and lust of days, and strife to live, and sins that flow from strife, some sweet, some bitter. Thus life's thirst quenches itself with draughts which double the thirst. That's from the Light of Asia. Same thing. Now he said, get control, to reach eternal, get control of the vehicles. Now we all know the story, in the gospel story, of the rich young man who came to Jesus. And he said to him, good master, what can I do to attain eternal life? And Jesus said to him, well, you know the commandments. Oh, yes, I've kept them all from my youth up. What do I lack? I always love that part where it says, and Jesus looked at him and loved him and said, well, one thing you lack, go and sell all that you have and give to the poor and come and follow me. You'll have eternal life. And the young man went away sorrowful because he had great possessions. You remember Jesus told the disciples how difficult it was for a rich man. Not the riches that hurt a man, it's the attachment to the riches. It's attachment. Because where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. It was the attachment. And he wanted the same thing, that eternal life. Now Hinduism tells us there are two types of souls. There are those on the forthgoing path, the pravriti mark as they call it, which means path, the path of outgoing, and those on the nivriti mark, the path of return. The souls on the outgoing path, life after life, have been seeking pleasure, sensation, wealth, fame, power. All these things, they're seeking happiness. It's quite all right. And they believe happiness can be found in these things. So they seek happiness. But by and by, they attain these things and they realize it's not what they wanted. It doesn't give them what they wanted. Because as St. Augustine said, Lord, thou hast made us for thyself, and our hearts are ever restless, till they find their rest in thee. That rest is the realization of the one life, that we are one with everything. Then the Hindus say, when a man has become thoroughly dissatisfied, he's lost the desire for these things. Then it says the doors of the mind open, and he can be told the truth. The happiness which he's seeking is within himself. It's all within himself. The kingdom of heaven is within you, said Jesus. And the Buddha said Nirvana is within you. And the Hindus say the Atma, the self, it's all within. What you're looking for is within yourself, and you think it's something outside. Then, if he's a Hindu, he goes to a guru, to teach how to find the power, the divinity which is within himself. And so the guru says, now the first thing you've got to do is to know yourself, what you are. You are spirit, one with the universal spirit. You are part of God, a manifestation of God in your inmost self. But you have taken on vehicles of matter. You've taken on a mental body, then an emotional body, which is still of course a matter, and a physical body. And you identify yourself with these bodies, one or other of the bodies. Now you've got to learn to separate yourself from these bodies, to know that you are none of these things, and the only way you can do that is to gain control of them and purify. And the Hindu will tell you, you start first with a physical body. To put it another way, Browning puts it, so well, that same thing which practically every religion teaches. Browning said, you remember, truth is within ourselves. It takes no rise from outer things, whate'er we may believe. There is an inmost centre in us all, where truth abides in fullness. And around, wall upon wall, the gross flesh hems it in, this crystal clear conception which is truth. A blinding and perverting carnal mesh enfolded and makes all error. And to know rather consists in opening out a way whereby the imprisoned splendour can escape. rather than seeking an entrance for a light supposed to be without. So first we have to know the carnal mesh which enfolds it and makes all error. And as the Hindu says, the first thing that carnal mesh is, know your physical body. The physical body they call the pranamaya kosha, which means the food sheet. It's built of food. You've got to, it's an animal body. You've got to learn absolutely control it just as you do a horse. If you had a horse, you have to control the horse, break the horse in. So you've got to break the physical body. Then you've got to build it in, again as their scriptures tell it, it has to be built of pure food. If the light's to shine in, the God light can shine out into the brain. Because it's the food that makes the particles, the cells of the physical brain is built of that food. If they are coarse, if you build them of coarse food, you can only tune into the lower, coarser rates of vibration. If you build them of the refined foods, you tune into the higher wavelength, to the spiritual wavelength, which you cannot do if you build that, if you build the cells of the physical brain of coarse food. That is what the Hindu Guru will tell you. Therefore, he'll tell you that that's one of the most important things, is to know exactly, to realize the importance of the food and the drink. The physical body must be built of pure food. Now, that means no meat, no fish. Why? Because you are seeking to the light which is going to come down into your physical brain from the higher planes, that higher rate of vibration. There must be love within you. Love for all things, love for life, because what means is, you're going to get rid of the I, the self, the I, that small, and find yourself in that transcendental divine life. That life which is one with everything. How can you become one with a life that of everything that you look at, if on the other hand you're going around killing things? You can't, you see. You just can't. Therefore, he says, no, you must cultivate harmlessness, compassion, love for everything, for that one life. Now that's Hinduism. Let's go now turn to Buddhism. Buddhism tells you, if you went to any Buddhist monk or Lama and you told him you wanted to take up the spiritual life, he would tell you exactly the same thing. You must first start by purifying your physical body. That physical body must be built of pure food and pure drink. And you must cultivate compassion for everything that lives. Kill not for pity's sake, said the Buddha, unless ye slay the meanest thing upon its upward way. Compassion for everything. Now when we come to Christianity, in the other great Eastern religions, we all find the same, but when we come to Christianity, and that is really one of the main points I want to make tonight, those of you who come up against Christians and you want to tell them about vegetarianism and these things, they will tell you, yes, but our Lord ate meat. Jesus was a meat eater and a wine drinker and all that. Now we've got to go into that. You see, of late, we are no longer living at the thought atmosphere of the world is changing. We are discovering old documents now which have been lost for years. which are being dug up like the Dead Sea Scrolls and others. They're being found not only in Palestine but in Egypt and Ethiopia and other places. We are getting new light on Christianity today, completely new light. And that is what my main object this evening largely is to deal with Christianity, how we can answer that question when we're asked, was Jesus a vegetarian? Now we have to remember that the New Testament as we have it today was decided on at the Council of Nicaea in the year 325. In the year 325 AD, the Emperor Constantine made Christianity the state religion of the Roman Empire, and the Bishop of Rome was made the Pontifex Maximus of the Roman Empire. And then it was that Christianity as we know it today was formed. At that Council of Nicaea, 76 Gospels and epistles were discarded, which used to be used in the old churches. And the present ones were all chosen. Now I'm going to read to you some of those that were discarded, some of those Gospels that were discarded. I have a list of them here. Here were some of the discarded Gospels. There was the first epistle of Clement to the Corinthians, we still have that. The Ignatius epistle to the Romans, Ignatius epistle to the Ephesians, and Ignatius epistle to Polycarp, one of the great Eastern bishops. Polycarp's epistle to the Philippians, the Gospel of the Infancy of Jesus, the Gospel of Mary, the Acts of Paul, the Epistle of Paul to Seneca, Seneca's Epistle to the Romans, the Gospel of James, the Gospel of Nicodemus, the Epistle to Trallians, the Epistle to Trallians, the Shepherd of Hermes. Then in addition to that there were 62 Gospels and Epistles which are no longer in existence but are referred to in various early Christian writings. Now and again we just get a copy of a few pages of some of these, so that we have to realize that the present four Gospels and the epistles were all practically it was practically they that were decided on as the canonical teaching in the year 325 and have been ever since. Now the present four Gospels are composite documents. You know, we have some wonderful scholars today, Greek and Hebrew scholars, who have given lifetime, who have practically given a lifetime to the understanding of these old documents. They were written, the four Gospels were written between 40 and 120 years after the supposed death of Jesus. Not by the apostles, not by those apostles named at all, by some. The names were given by different ones who claimed that they had received it from these different apostles. Now modern scholarship has proved that many of the parables and sayings of Jesus which you find in the Gospels were drawn from ancient Babylonian and Essene documents which existed centuries before the supposed birth of Jesus. Quite a number of the parables are Essene. They've discovered them, you see, recently. Some of them in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Long before this at all. All this has been discovered. Today even the great Roman Catholic Church no longer claims the literary accuracy of the Gospel stories, but say that much of the Gospels are symbolical and allegorical, and that so often They represent the interior experiences of the soul, interior experiences of the soul, which are put into an outer form. Now I'm quoting from Fordham University. I forget just which of the Jesuit fathers. I'm sorry, I didn't put it down. Not Pope John, the Pope before Pope John gave him permission, asked that Catholic scholarship be brought up to date. That it had to be brought up to date, and this was announced by the Jesuits that in future the Gospels need not be taken literally. They were symbolical and allegorical. Now, for instance, the fish. Take the fish. We hear a great deal about fish. Fish plays a large part. Do you remember St. Peter was a fisherman? And Jesus said to the apostle he would make them fishers of men. Do you remember the nets and the fishes being brought in? Do you remember the coin to Caesar being found in the fish's mouth? All the whole lot we get about fish. Now, Jesus the teacher came to strike the keynote of the Piscean age over 2,000 years ago, at the beginning of the Piscean age. Now, what is the sign of Pisces? 2 fishes. And when the disciples asked as to for a sign, he said no sign would be given except the sign of Jonah, the fishman of Nineveh, which is Pisces. No sign would be given to them except Pisces. Today, the mitre of a Catholic bishop, what is it? It's a cod's head. It's supposed to. If you're told, it represents the head of a cod. The mitre of the bishop, and His Holiness the Pope, Pope Paul, what does he wear? A fisherman's ring. The whole of it. Now, the sign of the early Christians, the sign of all the early Christians, was not the sign of the cross, was the sign of 2 fishes. Go to the catacombs. You will find there. The sign of the cross didn't come in till after 325. Before that, it was the sign of the fish. Jesus was called the big fish, and the Christians were first called fishermen and fishes, because it was the beginning of the Piscean age, the fish age, just as at the present time we're at the beginning of the Aquarian age, the age of air, which is the man pouring out the water of life. So that is really why you find all this fish business in it. Now, at the time of Jesus, there were 3 principal sects among the Jews. There were the Essenes, the Sadducees, and the Pharisees. Now the Essenes repudiated the blood sacrifices in the temple, and they were vegetarians. They never touched alcohol, never touched meat or fish, and many of them were celibate. They sought their idea was to perfect themselves and attain liberation. And Jesus was supposed by many of the ancient writers to have been an Essene. And also, there was among some of these Essenes, there was a very strict sect called the Nazarenes. Now, do you remember that over the cross, what was put in? Did Pilate have put? Iesus Nazarenus Rex Iudorum, which is translated Iesus Jesus, Nazarenus the Nazarene, Rex King Iudorum of the Jews. Jesus the Nazarene King of the Jews is what is supposed to be there. Because again, the Nazarenes were a very strict sect who never cut their hair, never touched meat or fish or alcohol. Now, as I say, they were the three principal sects: the Essenes, the Sadducees, and the Pharisees. The Essenes, as I said, repudiated blood sacrifices and were vegetarians and never touched alcohol. The Sadducees, the priestly caste, were the upholders of the blood sacrifices and the temple worship, whereas the Pharisees, although while in Jerusalem they upheld the temple worship, the sacrifices, yet they largely promoted the synagogues in the towns and the villages where there was no sacrifice teaching, just as you have your Jewish synagogue today. Now, if we go back in Jewry, if we go back to 1,000 years after the time of Moses, we come to the time of the captivity, and you remember the story of the childhood of the prophet Daniel. You remember how Daniel turned to the first chapter of the book of Daniel. There we read how three of the children of the princes of Judah were taken by Nebuchadnezzar. Four of them were taken by Nebuchadnezzar to be educated in all the knowledge of the Chaldeans, particularly their knowledge of astrology and all that kind of thing. They were Daniel, Hananiah, Michael, and Azariah. Now you remember how they were to be fed from the king's table, the king's meat and the king's wine, and how Daniel said to the eunuch who was in charge of them, "Please give us pulse to eat, vegetables to eat. We do not want to defile ourselves with meat or with wine." And the eunuch said, "Well, you know, my lord the king, you'll begin to look pale and all the rest of it, and he'll have my head." Now Daniel said, "Just let us have it 1 week at a time. If we begin to look that, we'll do what you say." But for 3 years they went on, and then in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, they proved 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers of his realm, because they were vegetarians. You see, you read it all, the whole story, in the first chapter of the book of Daniel. Now we turn now to some of the church fathers. Now let us go back to Hegesippus, who lived from 150 to 180 A.D. His writings. I'm quoting now from writings of the church fathers, which can be read just today. He states that James, the brother of our Lord, was holy from his mother's womb, that he drank neither wine or strong drink, nor ate any form of flesh. Now let us come to St. Clement of Alexandria, the head of the catechetical school of Alexandria, from 150 to 210 A.D. He was the head of the catechetical school of Alexandria. That was the principal school of Christian learning in the world at the time. He tells us there was a tradition that the Apostle Clement tells us there was a tradition that the Apostle Matthew lived on nuts and vegetables, and that he never touched, and that he, the prophet Matthew, never touched meat. Clement himself, St. Clement himself, was a great supporter of vegetarianism. Now, other advocates for vegetarianism were Tertullian, one of the ancient fathers, and St. Clement also tells us that there was a legend that St. Peter was a vegetarian. Now, as we know, the Roman Church asks its people to abstain from meat on Friday, every Friday. There is a meat fast in the Roman Church, because all this you'll see comes down, because the early Christians were Essenes, and it all comes down really from the early days. But the Greek Church is much stricter than the Roman Catholic Church. They abstain from the Roman Catholics abstain from meat on the Friday. In the Greek Church, they're asked to abstain from flesh food for nearly half the days of the year. In the Greek Orthodox Church, you know, they're having some trouble now, our Greek friends, with in connection with their church here in Australia. In the Eastern Church, that is the Greek, the Coptic, and the Russian, the majority of the monks follow the rule of St. Basil, 350 a day, in which meat is forbidden altogether, but fish is permitted on feast days. Now the Benedictine monks, founded 530 AD, under their rule flesh is forbidden except for the sick and the weak. The Trappists, well, we'll know of the Trappists, they're the people who never speak. You remember the Trappist monks? Founded 1664 AD, under their rule are pledged to abstain from meat, fish, and eggs, unless very ill. Now the Carthusian order of monks, founded 1084, are strict vegetarians, except that they are allowed to eat fish. It is presented to them, but they're not allowed to buy it. That is fish only. Many of the very early Christian sects, such as the Ebionites, the Manichaeans, and the Montanists, were all strict vegetarians. Now, why? Because meat is a coarse food. As Dr. Alexis Carroll in his book Man the Unknown points out, that this civilization is heading to self-destruction, and he was not referring to atom bombs, but to wrong eating and drinking and the stress and strain introduced into our lives. Then Carroll goes on to say, food can get to the soul. Now that is the physical body. We've been dealing only with the physical body. Now to realize, in order to release the hidden splendor within each of us, we must know our emotional and mental body and bring these lower bodies into alignment. Now we all know the trouble that most people know the trouble the emotional body gives. They have with that. As Carroll and others say, we affect our emotions by our food. If we have coarse food, the theosophists call it an astral body, you'll have a coarse astral body or a coarse emotional body. And you're likely, if your food is coarse, you have the tendency to coarse emotions if the food is coarse. Now, let me read what the German scientist has to say about that. One of the great German scientists has showed that every kind of animal tissue, however you may cook it, retains marked characteristics of the animal. It imparts psychologically, physiologically, some of the characteristics of that animal. Now let us go to our emotional body. Man, know thyself. We are not only physical, but then we have this body of emotions, this body of desire. It has the emotion, but has the desire, dozens of them. It wants us, to be angry often, to say sharp words, to be greedy for money, to envy other people their possession, jealous, all that kind of thing, going on all the time. Our emotions. Now we know today, as psychiatrists are telling us that how 75% of the people in all the hospitals are there. What has caused their trouble? Emotional upsets. Emotional upsets is the trouble. Dr. Colonel in the military surgeon, the book The Military Surgeon, Dr. Colonel David M. Bannon, in an article entitled The Doctors in the Army, writes, 2/3 of the patients who come to physicians for treatment, half of that number have bodily disorders to account for their sickness, but the other half, while having demonstrable physical illnesses, have symptoms that at least are dependent, have all spring from emotional factors. The new study of psychosomatics demonstrated that the human psyche or soul does not readily lend itself to easy and quick diagnosis. Spiritual and emotional hurts can be detected by a fever thermometer, but it's very much harder to find out, to get to the emotional upsets which have caused the trouble. Our Dr. Dax tells us that 75% of all the beds here in Melbourne occupied by patients, the basic cause of their illness is emotional upsets through the emotions. Therefore, we have to learn to control these emotions, and our food affects our emotions. That is where the vegetarianism, you see, does so much good when we come to the emotions. Therefore, the emotions have to be purified, and what will help them intensely is the right kind of food. Now we come to the mind. In one of the Buddhist scriptures we read, thought in the mind hath made us what we are. Whatever we are today, you or I, anyone you know of, what made them that? Their thoughts. Their thoughts. It's going on all the time. What is the predominant thought which we give way to? We build our future thought by thought, for good or ill and know it not, yet so the universe is wrought. Thought is another name for fate. Choose well thy destiny and wait, for love brings love and hate brings hate. We are thought made. Thought is creative. What a man thinks on, that he becomes. Therefore, thought is so important. Thought in the mind has made us what we are. Therefore, the mind has to be controlled and used as an instrument. And first we have to have a goal. And the goal is, for each of us, is to become one with the universal life, to become masters, to be liberated from the wheel of births and deaths, to be masters, to be channels through which the love of God and the helpfulness of God may flow out to others, to be channels. Now that should be the goal. Let us have that goal. Then, turn the mind. The mind, as a rule, all the time is turning about itself. Our thoughts turn round about ourselves as all, how is it going to affect me? How will this affect me? How will that, what will I get out of it? Do I like what he's saying? Do I like what she's saying? Always I. This I has to be dissolved. All the religions tell us that it has to be dissolved. And we have to set out to break down this sense of separateness and to realize the unity of life. That all others are not only brothers but our very self. Life is one. You and I are one. If I hurt you, I hurt myself. You hurt me, you hurt yourself. Because we're one. Life is one. We have to break down separate, realize the unity of life, and learn to serve. Just as here the people here, you people here, who run this vegetarian society, who seek in every way to get rid of cruelty to animals, to get rid of that terrible superstition that man needs flesh for food. You who do that, you are serving humanity in the great cause. You are benefactors of the race, because everyone who spreads abroad these ideas is uplifting the whole race. Oh, hidden light vibrant in every atom. Oh, hidden light shining in every creature. Oh, hidden love embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is therefore one with every other.